Parenting is good training to be CEO because we can't control our children's actions, right? It helped me understand that just because I said so wasn't a reason for them to do anything.
Meet Ellen Coleman, CEO and Chairman of DuPont. In this Women and Leadership program, we'll tell you how this remarkable woman and mother is leading one of the nation's oldest companies.
This is a special edition of Nightly Business Report. Nightly Business Report is made possible by...
How does an investment manager stand the test of time? By taking a long view through all market cycles and keeping a close eye on risk. Franklin Templeton Investments, a solid approach to investing for over 60 years. Gain from our perspective.
This program is made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of Nightly Business Report. Tonight, we're focusing on Ellen Coleman, leader of one of the country's oldest and best-known industrial companies, DuPont. DuPont's story began in 1802, right here on the Brandywine River in Wilmington, Delaware. DuPont made gunpowder back then, and the power came from the water wheel right behind me. Coleman took over at this storied corporation at the height of the crash and recession in 2009. It's her job to take DuPont, which was once a household name known for innovation, back to the success and profitability that the company enjoyed for decades. Stockholders and industry are watching closely. How do you think you're doing?
You know, so I think we're doing pretty well. I think that we've tackled the problems of the global financial crisis. I think we've come through it very strongly. You know, I get all the credit now, right? I'll get all the blame if it goes the other way as well. So I understand that part.
The numbers back her up. Coleman increased DuPont's revenues by 21% last year, up to nearly $32 billion. But the DuPont she heads today is not the DuPont of the past.
DuPont has changed dramatically over the last 20 years. We are heavily into biology, biotechnology, in addition to chemistry and material science. So we're a science company, really an advanced material and agriculture company.
2 or 3 decades ago, this was the DuPont Americans knew.
It is another example of how DuPont helps to bring you an ever-increasing supply of better things for better living through chemistry.
DuPont dropped that very famous motto. Is chemicals a dirty word at DuPont these days?
No, you know, chemistry itself is a phenomenal science, and chemistry has done so much for the world and will continue to do so. But it really is marrying chemistry with biology and material science to create much better solutions for the world.
For most of the 20th century, DuPont scientists used petrochemicals to invent products that became household names, like nylon and Teflon.
DuPont promised a future that was stain-free, wrinkle-free, stick-free, silk-like, wool-like, water-repellent, heat-retardant, lightweight, and really flexible.
The company now focuses on less glamorous products to feed a growing population, reduce dependence on fossil fuels, and protect crops, people, and the environment. DuPont's mantra is sustainability. What does that mean?
It's really that progression towards more sustainable products that last, towards products that have less of an impact on the environment.
So DuPont is green, is that what you're saying?
DuPont understands green and is moving to green.
Coleman grew up in DuPont country. She was born and raised in Wilmington. She attended the Tower Hill School. At 5 feet 9 inches, she played center on the high school basketball team and was co-captain. Patty Marshall was her coach.
Back when she was in high school, you could tell there probably was something very special about her. She was very self-assured. And we ran a very competitive program, and she was very competitive, and I imagine still is, or she wouldn't be where she is now.
What I think team sports do is teach you how to be a team with a very diverse group of people. They might be your friends, they might not be your friends. Team sports really teach you how to collaborate, across a broad spectrum of personalities or individual talents and learn how to get the most out of what you have. And I think that's a really important skill in business.
Ellen as captain and her co-captain did a very good job of making sure the team worked as a team. They weren't out for individual highlights, and they did work well as a team. And I credit her and the other co-captain with doing that.
Ellen majored in engineering at Tufts and studied management at Northwestern. There she got an MBA and met her husband, Michael Coleman. After a stint at General Electric, both went to work at DuPont. Michael is now the head of global marketing.
So your husband, Mike, is working here. I mean, how weird is it to have your husband a subordinate?
Well, so he and I have worked in the same companies for the last 25 years. So we've always been used to, working in the same industry. We're both marketing types and engineers.
But you're the CEO.
That's true. That is true. I guess maybe because it's been 22 years we've both been working for the company, that it just hasn't created any of those issues.
The couple have 3 children, a daughter in college, and twin boys heading into their senior year in high school.
Just about every working woman watching this interview struggles to find a balance between their career and their family. And you've been talking about raising your 3 kids. How did you do it?
Well, balance was never my goal, right? I think just surviving might have been for part of it. But I've had very supportive bosses, throughout my career. I have a very supportive husband. He and I truly do, share the parenting. I mean, we have this rule, both of us can't be out of town at the same time.
You were quoted recently as saying that parenting has been good training to be CEO. What did you mean by that?
Parenting is good training to be CEO because we can't control our children's actions, right? We can counsel them, we can reprimand them, we can motivate them, but at the end of the day, you're taking this child and trying to instill values into them and things like that. And I think it helped me become more patient. It helped me understand that just because I said so wasn't a reason for them to do anything. I had to learn that listening side in order to really be successful. And I think having 3 kids really helped me with that.
Well, tell us a little more about that.
When you manage a household, 3 kids, all the stuff, you got to focus on the important stuff and not the little stuff. And I think that's very, very true in business.
Jack Markell and his family were next-door neighbors to Michael and Ellen Coleman for 10 years. Now he's the governor of Delaware.
She's absolutely somebody who's willing to roll up her sleeves and get her hands dirty, so to speak. When our families would eat together, she and I would always end up doing the dishes. It was a job that had to be done. She is very, very hands-on. She's a great mother.
As governor, Markell knows that DuPont is one of the state's biggest employers and taxpayers. He thinks the company is in good hands.
Ellen is amongst the most straightforward business people I've ever met. She tells it like it is. She's analytical, she figures out the problem, she figures out how to make it work, and then she executes.
Executing some of those important decisions happens right here in the DuPont boardroom. As CEO and chairman, Coleman is the first woman ever to lead the company.
So here's the boardroom. Now it's a daunting room to present in, if you can imagine.
Very impressive boardroom.
Look at that. Wow. Look at the size of the table.
Where do you sit?
I sit down here.
At the head of the table?
At the head of the table. I guess I pay the bill.
When you had your first board meeting and you were running it as CEO and you're sitting at the head of the table, what did it feel like?
A little scary, I was like, wow, okay, here we are. But, it was, interesting from that standpoint.
All right, so here you're in this room with all of these portraits of former CEOs of DuPont. Do you ever feel intimidated, like they're peering over you?
Of course. You always think they're looking over your shoulder, making sure, are we investing in the right science? Are we focused in the right areas so that we're really relevant to our customers and to society for decades?
Coleman took over at DuPont as the world headed into the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression.
Our volumes were plummeting around the world. The only business that held up through the entire crisis was agriculture. Agriculture didn't have a global financial crisis, but we had plant sites that were idling. We did not know how long it would be. We had no view. The supply chains couldn't help us because they were in free fall as well. And so we had to determine how we were going to restructure the company. And so that's very difficult because you don't take those things lightly. These are...
So what was your first official act that you had to make the decision? It was your call.
To lay off thousands of people.
Cullman ordered 4,500 layoffs, almost 8% of DuPont's staff, and she imposed furloughs without pay. The last time DuPont was forced to take such actions was in the 1930s.
At the beginning, I thought it was the worst possible timing. How could this happen, right? But in retrospect, it was really helpful. People at that time were looking for direction. What do we need to do to survive? What do we need to do to come out of it stronger?
How did it feel taking over at that time?
You know, it's humbling.
I mean, you've done so many things in a career that has spanned 30 years, and then you're in a situation that you've never experienced before in your life.
For guidance, Cullman dug up out-of-print history books about DuPont.
It taught me a lot about transitions and how difficult they were, about you really have to face reality because the world changes.
Did you turn to anyone outside of DuPont for advice now that you were a new CEO?
I reached out to women I know that lead small companies and large companies. I reached out to a couple of men I know, and just to listen.
Wall Street analyst Hassan Ahmed likes the way she handled the crisis.
One thing that DuPont did very well, and Ellen Kullman in particular, the current CEO of DuPont, that she narrowed the focus and defined where DuPont is going very well.
That focus helped Cullman recognize the need to leave the research budget untouched during the recession. DuPont filed more new patents during that period than at any time in its history.
208 years is a long time, so we've been through a lot of recessions before. And what I found was a company that even in its darkest days turned to science to really figure out how to make it successful again. And that's why we decided to not cut our research and development budgets.
That decision paid off.
Literally, almost every quarter since she became CEO, not only has she beaten consensus or analyst estimates, but she has consistently also raised her full year earnings guidance as well. So certainly full marks on that front.
Cullman also gets high marks from investors and analysts for DuPont's performance. In 2010, the company was one of the best performing stocks in the Dow Jones Industrial Average.
Sales were up 21% and earnings per share were up 62%.
There is this perception that women do not make strong leaders in big companies, and there's this glass ceiling. Why do you think that is?
You know, I don't know because that wasn't my experience, but I mean, certainly there were barriers along the way, and certainly, I mean, having 3 kids, I could have chosen a different route, but I love what I do, and I love the company. I found great acceptance by, the men that preceded me, and I just think that you have to have, if it's your passion, then you've got a shot at it.